judge said that he wants to do it within 120 days, 4 months. And the defense, of course, asked for that mistrial once again, and this time the judge said, I grant it in the manner of manifest necessity. Frederica?
And now what about an explanation from the jurors? There are opportunities during some cases where jurors may be able to stand behind, talk to prosecutors or defense attorneys about the reasoning behind their feelings on a verdict. Did that happen in this case?
Here's what was said in the courtroom, so I don't think we know the answer to that. The judge said to the jury, I cannot stop you from talking to the media, talking to the public, but I am going to tell you what you cannot talk about, because jury deliberations are private. They're secret. They are not to be communicated about. And the judge said you cannot talk about what people said, what views were, what points of view were, what votes were. He just went on and on about what they could not discuss. And then he said it is, at this point, Kevin Steele had not stood up. He said it is up to the prosecution, but there may be another jury out there at this point that may be a potential jury, is what he was trying to say. When the jury left, he said there is an outstanding motion that he will rule on. It sounded like what it had to do with was to whether to keep the jurors' names sealed. Now, this is sort of a constitutional issue here, but if there is another retrial within 4 months, that may give him some legal basis to deny the unsealing of their names.
Now, Jean, we did not hear from Bill Cosby. We did see pictures of him waving his arm, pumping up the hand, sign of victory. We did hear a statement read by his wife, Camille Cosby. You want to summarize the statement there? And she really did go after the judge in particular.
That's right. Sensationalism, lies, really discrediting the judge, which was very interesting because all of that has been kept in. But now I think they felt that this was the time, this was the right time to give their opinions. This judge is a very respected judge in this courthouse. He has been a judge for a long time. He developed the drug court to help those convicted of drug felonies, help rehabilitate them. A very caring judge. A judge that made decisions for the defense and for the prosecutor, both sides, during the course of the pretrial motions. But it's interesting that we now know how at least Camille Cosby feels about Judge Stephen O'Neill.
All right, Jean Cazares, we'll check back with you. Thank you so much. Let's talk more about this with our legal analyst, Laura Coates, with us, Danny Savalos, CNN's Michael Smerconish, and I believe, is Paul Callan also with us? No? Okay, so here we go. So, Laura, you first. The reaction to this decision, this after learning for so many hours this jury deliberated and had at least a dozen questions, including asking to look again at the phone logs between Constant and Cosby, also wanting to hear about a better definition of reasonable doubt, and then now a mistrial.
You know, I'm not surprised there's a mistrial given the length of the deliberations and also given the actual testimony that came in. Remember, the burden was on the prosecution to prove that this happened. This is a very lengthy, delayed case in the sense that this happened allegedly in 2004. You had little forensic evidence in here, and you only had one other witness who was allowed to testify about a seemingly analogous scenario that allegedly happened to her. Of course, the court of public opinion had dozens and dozens of women who came forward to say that they too had been assaulted by Bill Cosby, but the judge would not allow that testimony in. So all you had was that one other witness and Andrea Constant. And to that end, Andrea Constant was effectively undermined in terms of her credibility by the defense for a number of reasons. Number one, there were 72 alleged phone calls between Bill Cosby and Andrea Constant following the alleged assault. She asked for tickets to a comedy show and brought him a gift, had her parents speak to him, and also there was indication that she may have gotten the dates wrong. And of course, there was a civil settlement for an undisclosed financial amount. Those things were all taken into account, I'm sure, by the jury, and certainly wielded by the defense, not in an act of simply sociological victim blaming, but as a way to put a hurdle in front of the prosecution to say, we've got to undermine the credibility. And that was apparently an effective tactic to at least plant a seed of doubt in the juror's mind that said, we cannot come to a conclusion about beyond all reasonable doubt that this actually happened.
So, Danny, I mean, Laura puts that out as though those would be, I would believe, considered by legal minds to be kind of obvious potential obstacles, these many phone calls that would follow an alleged assault, and that might be problematic for the prosecution in this case. So, what do you suppose was the thinking behind the prosecution as to why they believe that the jurors would look at this thinking that these are not potential obstacles to proving the case?
Well, the prosecution knew it was problematic. That's why they had an expert come in and testify as to why victims fail to report or report late or even continue to have contact. So that is a recognition by the prosecution that this was clearly going to be an issue. Another recognition was even seeking to introduce what we call 404B evidence in the first place, prior bad acts. They sought to admit about a dozen prior witnesses or really accusers of Cosby. They were permitted one. And generally, if your case is airtight, if